Okay, folks, welcome back. Hope you guys can see me. It is evening, so it's a little darker than it normally is. Hey, today we are talking about. Let me go back to the beginning. Basic principles of government. Basic principles of government. So this is what we would normally be doing, like the kind of the first lesson out of the book, topic one, lesson one. So we are kind of going back to basics here. So let's do this. First of all, let's see. You should have a worksheet, by the way. You are filling this along. You are doing it at the same time that this video is going. So it should fit pretty close, okay, to the worksheet. I hope so. Anyway, here we go. Why do we have government? Why is government needed, or is it needed? Do you want to be total anarchy? Do you want to have no rules? How would that be? How would that be if really there's no rules out there, no one enforcing any kind of rules? If it was really to each their own, uh, I don't think it'd be so hot. As much as government isn't great at things, lack of government, especially on a large scale, might be a little Mad Max-ish. So if we were in class, you'd be discussing this with a partner, and you're not in class. So maybe just give a little ponder. Why do we need government? And there is a form. There's a question on the form. It says, why should or do governments exist? They exist to keep order. They exist to make sure that people are treated fairly. They exist to, in modern society, they exist for a lot of other reasons. To, maybe to put food on the table, maybe to just prevent war, keep us safe, have some order, make sure our food is safe to eat, make sure buildings are constructed with some safety, cities are designed with traffic flow proper issues, schools are put out there. We can have private schools and just everyone teach their own kids, but governments provide schools. You're all sitting in a government provided school. So a lot of reasons for government. Just put a few of those down. Okay, there are three basic powers of government. Three basic powers. You honestly should know all of them, but we will go through. Here we go. Number one, we start with the legislative powers. Legislative powers. Legislative powers is the power to write legislation or laws, right? The writing of laws, the writing of legislation. That's a power. We have an executive power. The executive enforces laws, executes laws, makes sure laws that are written by the legislators, get carried out, get enforced, or followed through with. And then lastly, we have the judicial power, and that is kind of to interpret the law, to interpret if a law is okay law, to interpret if a law has been broken. The judicial system would be there's courts and there are prisons and there's consequences for actions. Okay? So the question I would have put if we were in class is, who has the ultimate power for each of these three powers? Okay, so think about that for a second. Like, for example, who is the legislative branch in the United States? Let's talk about the United States here. Well, we've talked about them already quite a bit in the first couple weeks of the semester. Legislative branch is the Congress. It's the House of Representatives. It's the Senate. That's the legislative branch. They write the laws. So for our system, both the House and the Senate need to sign and write the exact same version of a law. So a law can only get passed if both the House and the Senate vote, a majority of them vote for the identical legislation. So it's part of our checks and balances. They both have to pass things. Okay. And then the executive branch, of course, that is led by the chief executive or the president. So the president is ultimately in charge of the executive branch. And the executive branch is gigantic. It's all the various government agencies, federal government agencies. It's all the various departments: the Department of Defense, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Education. the Department of State. There are lots of different executive. They're a huge employer. Tons of people work for the executive branch, but ultimately the president is at the top of that. And then lastly is the judicial branch, and that of course is the top dog in the judicial branch is the Supreme Court. But there are lots of federal courts. There is a whole judicial federal system. Um, there are federal prisons. I don't know if that's technically under the judicial branch, but that's all part of that system. They're probably run by the executive branch, actually, the judicial prisons. All right, there we go with that. Okay, this is an interesting one. So the state. We're going to define a state. So right now in your head, think of a state. Give me a state. Don't give it to me, but think about a state. Right? You're probably wrong. Here's what a state is. Ready? A lot of you might have thought of California or Texas or New York. Well, those aren't states. We'll tell you why. Okay, so the state, by our definition here, is a political community that occupies a definite territory and has an organized government with the power to make and enforce laws without approval from any higher authority. Okay? Political community, defined territory, organized government, and they don't answer to anybody. That government is the highest authority in the land. All right. There are nearly 200 states in the world today. 200 states. But here's the deal. Can I move this? I'm trying to move my picture here. Let's delete it. Picture's gone. Maybe I can bring it back somehow. I'm not sure. California, we're not a state by this definition. Of course, it is the state of California, but by our definition here, California is not a state. You can go back and think about why. Okay? So, but why are we called states? If we're not technically a state, why are we called states? Well, way back, 1776, when we declared our independence from the British, right? We were colonies, 13 colonies. Those colonies consider themselves states. Okay? All right. So I'm figuring things out here. Colonies consider themselves states. And in other words, they consider themselves independent. They were declaring independence from Britain because they didn't want to be controlled by anybody. So the colony of New York, the colony of Virginia, the colony of, name a colony, Massachusetts, South Carolina, those colonies wanted independence and they wanted to control their own destiny. And so they thought of themselves as a state, as a unique individual state that is no longer under the control of the British. The problem was none of those states or colonies were strong enough to defeat the British on their own. So New York, as a colony / wanting to be a state, didn't have the military might to kick the British out by themselves. So those 13 colonies united together. They united, right? And so you might recognize this, a little thing on the United States, the Declaration of Independence. And you might know, you can Google this, you can check this out for yourself. But when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and by the way, this word here is unanimous declaration of the 13 united. So look at this right here. So look at the word united in United States. So those 13 colonies, they didn't consider themselves the United States like we do today, right? USA. They were states that were united. I don't know if any teachers taught you this. You're all hopefully have a familiarity with the Declaration of Independence. We should be reading it in class, although we won't really be in class to do it. So, but they were states that were united. They were not the United States. So at the beginning, 1776, We didn't create the United States in 1776. It took a few years later to actually write our Constitution. And with the creation of the Constitution, the official name United States of America becomes locked in, and then it becomes an uppercase U. All right. So there's that. Let me take this spotlight off here. Okay. Get a little repeat there. So there's just more copies of it, but you can see the unanimous declaration of the 13 United, you can't even read it, teeny tiny word, States of America. And then it was written, of course, signed by the founders, and John Hancock is the largest signer. And he was a rich dude and powerful guy. All right. So this would have only been a Google, sorry, not a Pear Deck question, and I'm not going to have it, but we just answered it. Declaration of Independence for the United States, rather than the United lowercase, as opposed to the uppercase. So today we're the United States of America, but back in the writing, we were just states that happen to be united. Okay. All right. So let me remind you the 4 features. It was actually in the definition of a state above, but here are the 4 essential features of a state. So you can write these down. It's got to have people. 1 feature is a population. It's got to have a population. Okay. If it's just a chunk of land, there's nobody there. There's no state there. It's got to have an established territory. It's got to have a territory that's that established. We know the boundaries. It's a for sure place. Every so often you get conflicts or a source of war over boundaries. I can think of like India and Pakistan have issues, and I think Nepal and China have some issues. There's some countries that will have issues over where boundaries start and stop, but for the most part, we have established territories. Okay, has to have sovereignty. This is one of the key ones. This right here is the reason why California is not a state by this definition, because California does not have supreme and absolute authority, right? California answers to the United States government, the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court has authority. Now, California has some, all of the United states have some authority within their boundaries, and they could do things differently, and that's part of what's called a federal system, another topic. But there still are limits, and they have to answer to greater authority in the U.S. Constitution. Let me hide myself. Okay. And then lastly, there must be a government. There must be an institution that maintains order, provides services, enforces decisions. So the government has to exist. And some sort of, if it's just, once again, no organized government and there's some people living there, there's not really a state there. Not really a state. Okay. So a little checkup here. Which of the following is a state? Which of the following is a state? And which is not? I will give you one hint. There's only one state on that list. One state. Okay? Think about it. Write it down. I don't even think I'm going to give you this answer, but one of them's a state, and the other 6 are not for various reasons. You might need to look up what some of these things are. I don't know. Okay? Check it out. All right. Next section. Theories of origin of the state. So where do states come from? Where do these governments, how did these things come about? Okay, there's something called force theory. That governments emerge when people are brought under control by force. So if you, like the Roman Empire, Romans way back when, they went out and conquered places, conquered city-states, conquered places, and took control and brought their government to them. Okay, so that's one way. You can go out and bring government because you are the stronger force. Okay, there's something called evolutionary theory. That states developed from some sort of family group. They evolved. That family group perhaps became, like, think about Let's not go to that. Think about, I'm thinking about Europe and castles and dukes and lords, and you become this. Perhaps back then you're kind of the strongest family. You get the most land, you get the best land, you get some of the local other people around you to kind of work for you. Maybe they got to pay you a little fine to be on your land, and then that turns into, like I said, maybe a castle, and you've got, you become a state. You've just become the strongest one. You've evolved, and your dad was strong, and you take over and you expand more power, and then your kid comes along and that expands the power, and there's evolution from local kind of family groups into little mini states. And then at some point you get big enough that you might control entire areas. Okay. There's also divine right theory. Okay. So there's actually could be a link here: evolutionary theory and divine right. So divine right theory is God's chose certain people, divine, divinity, church, that they are ruling because God wants them to rule. But how do we know God wants them to rule? Well, they're ruling. The church may often back in the day, you might have had the local king and the queen that were said to be, chosen by God to rule, perhaps. And maybe they make a deal with the church. It maybe benefits the church to have the king on their side, and it benefits the king to have the church on their side. During Europe, hundreds and even thousand or so years ago, the church was really important, and you couldn't get much done unless you're the church on your side. And so, but there was this kind of divinity. Hey, my family has been chosen. Maybe they were the strong family. You know, maybe they were the family that evolved, and you could argue that, hey, I would. Let me get my picture back there. I like seeing myself. That we're ruling because God wants us to rule, because they've given us this power and this strength, and we wouldn't be in charge unless God didn't allow it. So we must be God's chosen people. That kind of idea. Okay, and then we get to kind of some modern, modern theory, a little more modern. And there's like social You would have learned this stuff in probably both U.S. and world history, like during the Enlightenment and things like that. So you might remember Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes had a theory about social contract. So the contract was, hey, we're going to give up some of our rights. We're going to give up some money. We're going to pay you some taxes. And in exchange, we're going to get protected. We're going to get law and order. We're going to get, some semblance of safety. And he was kind of writing this during the English Civil War, when there's chaos, and it was, I think, the late 1600s. Chaos and mayhem and fighting and death, and we just needed to stop it. Let's just stop it, settle down. And so that would be his social contract. The contract is between the government and the people. We give up some rights, we give you some money, we pay our taxes, and in exchange, you protect us. Okay. John Locke had other rights. He believed in natural rights. So the next slide will go into a little more detail, but you might remember Locke. Locke was really influential with the first, with the founding fathers. Like, a lot of his theories are the reasons, they're all over the Declaration of Independence. But John Locke thought that we have natural rights. People have natural rights, and the government's job is to protect those rights. And if you don't, you might be overthrown. Like, that's his contract is, we allow you to be the government as long as you protect our natural rights. And so, what's the natural rights? There's Thomas Hobbes. It's kind of a grouchy looking dude, kind of a pessimist. So if you think about past Hobbes, he's like, hey, we should, be restricted in our rights. Maybe we shouldn't have freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Maybe we shouldn't have, the right to assemble, because that's scary and bad things happen when those things occur. And so we'll give up some of those rights, just keep us protected. So he was a pessimistic dude, is how I always teach it. And then here's John Locke. I don't know if he's optimistic, but here's your natural rights. So what were John Locke's natural rights? Number one was life. We have right to life. We have right to live, maybe as we want. We have right to liberty. We have right to freedom. Like to do kind of what we want with our lives, and we have the right to property, life, liberty, property. In other words, we should be able to own a house, have our own stuff. Those are our rights as humans. Every human would have these rights, natural rights. And he would have said it is, the government's job to protect those things. So, of course, this should sound familiar. Life, liberty, and not property, but Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Hint, hint, hint. That might be on a test. He gave life, liberty, property. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness is written in the Declaration of Independence. So Thomas Jefferson utilized some of these John Locke natural rights. Section 3, what are the purposes of government? All right, so there are some general purposes. 1, maintain order, establish justice, make sure we're safe. Don't allow people to run around the streets just killing people. Maintain order. Make laws, enforce laws, protect citizens, police and fire protection. Okay, next purpose. Provide public services, promote the general welfare. If you look at We the People, a little preamble for the Constitution, promote the general welfare. We'll get to. So things like education. I like sewer systems. I want to flush a toilet and have it just go away. Communications, transportation, those kind of public services. Spreading the vaccine, making sure people get vaccinated during this COVID time period. All sorts of public services. And then, of course, we want national security. We want common defense. We want to make sure we're safe from internal and external foes, right? And there's some economic decision making for government. There's a responsibility that we see as to make sure do the best they can to promote jobs and people have a roof over their heads and things like that. So there's a lot of economic decisions that the government makes. Okay, tax policies, spending policies, banking and trade, and just general financial well-being. There's a lot of obviously money involved with government, but a lot of that is supposed to promote our economic welfare as well. Okay, protect our rights and give us the blessings of liberty. And you might have noticed this is once again comes from, I think we're going to show the video here. Okay, so which of those purposes, maintain order, provide public services, promote national security, make our economic citizens, and may protect our rights, which of those 5 purposes does each of these next slides, which is it? What does it have? What's that? It's purpose. Transportation. Well, what does that sound like to you? Sounds to me like public services. Provide public services. Yeah, taxes. Yeah, darn taxes. Look at how much, this is 2012, so it's changed a little bit, probably gone up. Way back in 2012, in the middle of President Obama's term, 26.5 cents of every dollar of income taxes went to the military. Another 20 cents went to healthcare. And then all these other little things get little chunks here and there. Okay, there we go. National security. Ooh, UCLA. Public services. That's the Pentagon. That's our national defense. Ooh, maintain order, right? Welfare. How many people are on welfare? This is back kind of towards the Great Recession time period, 2009. Let's promote general areas more providing services, fire protection. Oh, is it not here? No longer available. That's weak. All right. If we were in class, I would have you be doing a partner quiz. I'd have you turn into a partner, and you would have to. You'd be looking at the screen and naming all these things. So I'm not going to have you do it right now because you can just skip through this. But remember, you need to know the types of powers that the government has. You should know the four characteristics of a state. You should know what Thomas Hobbes believed. You should know which of the following is a state. And you should say France. France is a state. Texas is not. Guam is a U.S. territory. Both of these answer to higher authorities. France, however, is an independent sovereign nation. Okay, what about, this would be the second partner. Whoops. Why is LA not a state? Well, because it's not an ultimate authority. There's California has power over it, so does the United States. What did John Locke believe? Remember, he believed in our natural rights, and the government's job was to protect those rights. And what did, I'll put myself up here again. Two historical origins of the state? You could have said, like, think about it. Force theory, evolutionary theory, divine rights, social contract theory, couple of social contracts. And according to our preamble, what's our government to do? And that was that video. And I don't have the preamble right here, but there's a whole song. And hang on, let me. Let's see. I hope you're getting the right page here. I'll find out. Here we go. In 1787, I'm told our founding fathers did agree to write a list of principles for keeping the people free. The USA was just starting out a whole brand new country. And so our people spelled it out, the things that we should be. And they put those principles down on paper and called it the Constitution. And it's been helping us run our country ever since then. The first part of the Constitution is called the Preamble and tells what those founding fathers set out to do. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare at hand, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. 17 Okay, there we go. I think that's all I got, everybody. I think you should be able to fill this in. And there's a couple questions at the end. And that's all I got. You take care.